So these topic lists have been on Arbor for you to be able to find the key areas for focus. As you can see, there's quite a lot of keywords in here, what we call tier 3 languages. It's really high level geography language. And in the past, looking at some of your mock exams, some of you have said that you haven't been able to answer questions because you didn't know what the words meant. So our focus really is going to be very much on key language that we need to know. So you do need to know what the word biome means. A large-scale ecosystem. You need to know some examples of biomes and their characteristics. So, for example, that in the desert it is hot and it is dry. In the rainforest it is hot and it's wet, for example. There's other keywords in here around things like indigenous. Indigenous people are people that have lived there for hundreds of thousands of years. The biosphere means the living layer of the earth. Goods and services. Goods are things we can take. Services are things that trees actually do without us really being able to see it, so that they are breathing things, for example. They're breathing out oxygen. We can't see it, but it's a service that they provide for us. And commercial interests is basically large scale being able to sell things like logs, for example, or farming at a commercial scale. Demand for resources, you need to know that it's increasing as population increases and people become richer or more affluent. You need to know your Malthus and your Boserup. So Malthus is doom and gloom, and Boserup said, don't worry, we will bring in new technology like combine harvesters, and we will be able to produce food on a mass scale to meet the needs of the people. You can see that you then need to know about the characteristics of the tropical rainforest, nutrients, how they move around the cycle, and the stores of soil, biomass, and litter. You need to know some plant and animal adaptations in the tropical rainforest. Direct threats means things that people do that they know it's actively going to have an impact, like deforestation is a direct threat. An indirect threat, for example, is something like climate change. It's something that happens because of the deforestation. Solutions and management, so ways in which they're using ecotourism, for example, to manage deforestation. The characteristics then of taiga forests. The taiga forests are the colder ones that we find across Russia and North America, and their nutrient cycle is much slower, mainly because the temperature's colder and it's also a bit drier too. Then you need to know the same, plant and animal adaptations and solutions and management of the taiga forest. The last section is really important, and it's probably the biggest section of the paper as well. You need to know about energy, renewables and non-renewables, recyclable and sustainable energies. We need to think about energy production, the impact that oil drilling has, fracking has on the environment, for example. Why some countries at a lower level of development have oil but cannot access it. A really good reminder here is a country like Nigeria. They've got loads of oil, but Shell are working in Nigeria to extract it because Nigeria didn't have the technology to be able to do that themselves. Consumption means how much we use of something. Production means how much we make of something. And when we think about around the world, who is consuming the most oil, it's mainly used by the richer countries and emerging countries because of things like transport, which is so much more advanced, factories manufacturing things. But we don't have the production levels to keep up, and so we have to buy energy from many different countries, and that's the case around much of the world as well. You need to know the difference between conventional oil, which is when you have a drilling platform, for example, out at sea. That's a usual way of collecting oil. And then unconventional is different ways of getting oil. That would be fracking or the Alberta tar sands. Energy efficiency means how effective we are in the energy we use. How can we increase our energy efficiency? We could turn off the lights when we leave a room. We could switch our PlayStation off at the wall. Conservation means trying to preserve things, and new technologies is things like fracking, for example. Attitudes to energies and stakeholders we're going to look at later. So let's have a look at some key areas to focus on. As I said before, lots of you like this exam because you've got a resource booklet, and it's so important that you use that resource booklet. The shorter questions at the start of the paper help you build up to the decision at the end. So I would normally suggest that you complete this paper starting at the beginning on the first page. Keep an eye on the clock though, and we'll talk about timings in a moment. You need to revise key terms for this paper, all of which can be found in your CGP guide, and the knowledge is mainly going to come from the resource itself. Some of the knowledge will be from your head, but they will only be short questions. So if it says use this figure, use the figure. Actually quote it within your work. If you're using an explain question, then again, make sure that the knowledge says, for example, as shown in figure 4, for example, and you can see I've literally then lifted the information from the figure and I've written it in. You get a mark just for copying something from the figure. Then you say this means that as a result. That double development is what gets you the maximum marks. And as we talked about before, don't forget your trend, evidence, anomaly. There will be plenty of maps, patterns, distribution, graph type questions in this resource. So as I said, there will be 2 8 markers in this exam. They are both in section C of the paper. So in terms of the paper, the start, section A and section B, they are short answer questions, maybe some multiple choice, maybe looking at a graph and unpicking the pattern. Section C and section D is where you want to spend most of your time. The whole exam is an hour and a half long, and ideally you want to try and get section A and section B done within about 30 to 40 minutes maximum by attacking those questions. That then gives you plenty of time to structure your 8 mark questions using the resources for the knowledge and think about planning your decision, which we'll look at on the next slide. It's so important to bug these key questions. Box the command word, underline the geography, and ensure the facts when you're planning come from the figure. I cannot tell you how important it is to literally copy from the figure in these questions. It will tell you what figure to look at. Again, if you're in a panic situation and you do not know what to do, you're going to cross out the word assess, you're going to change it for an explain, and you're literally going to give me 2 facts from the figure that it tells you, and you're going to develop them saying this means that. Again, you're going to try and put a conclusion on the end and decide which of the 2 facts you feel is the most important or most significant and why. Thinking about the scale or the amount of people it affects or how long term that problem is going to be. The last couple of slides are about the decision, which is a 12-mark essay with 4 marks for SPAG. It's really important that you hear me when I say you cannot get the decision wrong. Whatever option you answer, you can get full marks on it. And I think that's what makes geography quite a special exam paper in this sense. There will always be one option which is about stopping everything. This always has a negative impact on money because normally it's stopping production of oil in some way. But it will have a positive environmental impact. Then you'll be having an option which is about slowing down production or reducing damage to the environment. That's what's usually the easiest one to choose because the country's still making money whilst the environment's improving. Then there will be a third option, which is usually to continue as usual or expand production. And this obviously has a great economic advantage, but it causes loads of damage to the environment. It is so important before you make a decision that you really unpick who is this decision for? Who do they want it to benefit? If it's the government, they're going to want as much money as possible and not really care about the environment. If it's local residents, they probably want some money or want jobs, but they also want the environment to be protected as well. If for any reason it's a local charity or an environmental group, they're most likely going to want to stop everything and preserve habitats. So think about the kind of angle that you're going to go for with whichever people they say the decision is for. The structure is shown on the next slide. Let's take a look. We've looked at this structure multiple times in class before, and in this exam I really want you to make sure that you leave at least half an hour for this decision-making answer structure, okay? It is so important to unpick who is the decision for, which bits of knowledge are you going to use from the resource, and plan your conclusion at the beginning in your head. Think about what am I deciding and why? How is this going to have the biggest long-term positive impact for the people that I'm making the decision for? You need a paragraph on the main significant reason why you chose your option, leave a line. The second reason why yours is the best, and then the third paragraph is basically slating the other two options, everything that's bad about the other two options and why you didn't choose them. So pause this now and have a look at the structure that I've shown below. So the final thing that you need to consider is the timings of the exam. I'd suggest that you leave yourself half an hour for section A and section B because they're the shortest questions, and you're also going to make sure that you attack the question, you don't write a big long sentence starter at the beginning. That would mean that you go into the exam at 2, so at 2:30 you want to be thinking about starting section C, which is where the 2 8 markers are, and you want to be doing section D, which is where the decision making question is. My last top tips are answer every question. If you're not sure, just copy something from the figures because you're probably going to get a mark anyway. Remember, if you get 50% of the marks on this paper, it's a grade 5. But also, this is the paper you really like, so it can pull up your grade overall. If you didn't like paper 1 or paper 2 didn't go very well, just have that positive attitude about it. And lastly, when you're doing your 8 markers, make sure you pick out your knowledge first from the figures and then decide which of those bits of knowledge is the most significant. Good luck!